shot at 60,000. There was another gentleman who came after Doc Carver who shot at 60,000. And he felt like that was the number. And so he shot, there were 60,000, that stack of wooden blocks you saw was 60,000 wooden blocks and change. Because he got to 60,000 and he still felt like he could go on. And he wanted, you know, you're going to make a record? You make a record. And so he kept going, and so what they did is he made sure with the judges, is it all right if we reuse this block? It's not mutilated too badly, let's reuse this. So they would see, after he shot at it, there were 2 holes in it, indeed. They hustled. They ran around this area and found cedar trees that had been chopped up into what they call basswood slabs. I don't know what they used them for, maybe, you know, decoration to put your name on there or something like that, a nameplate. They cut these by handsaw in 1907. They cut these basswood slabs into cubes that would be acceptable to throw up in the air and shoot. So he wanted to go as far as he could. He got to 72,500 and there was no more ammunition. The guy who got all the ammunition he needed, there was no more that they could. And they sent people out in San Antonio. They sent people as far away as Seguin to get more ammunition because he went well past the 60,000 that he thought he was going to do, but he felt that he could get it. And people convinced him to stop, or tried to convince him to stop. Stop. You've got 60,000. You've only missed, I think at that point, he missed, 6. I can't remember what the number was, but he had shattered Doc Carver's accuracy record, and Captain Bartlett, the man who came after him, shattered it. He just kept going. They were using .22 caliber rifles, but this is again where it's hard to compare records over different eras because the weight of Adolph Toepperwein's gun was 5 pounds. The weight of Tom Frye's gun, which was a breakthrough firearm, DuPont owned Remington at this point and was wondering what they could do with all that nylon sitting around the place rather than make parachutes and nylon stockings. And DuPont, the people at Purity Hall at DuPont asked Remington, can you make a gun out of nylon? And so they did. It was mostly out of nylon, plastic. The barrels were metal, and there were, the plate on the stock was metal. Certain things in the apparatus, the receiver, were metal, but that was a plastic gun, and it weighed 4 pounds. So that may not sound like much, it's 20% lighter, and over so many. Yeah, the weight of the gun will add on the ballistics will add up to more of a recoil. Now with a .22, it's not near as bad as a 12 gauge, but it's still obviously these guys felt over 70,000 and 100,000 shots, a great amount of strain from that gun. But they were both .22 caliber weapons. The nylon 66 from Remington went on to sell more than 1 million. It was I believe it was the top-selling .22 ever made.
Well, I remember that picture of him sitting on those wooden blocks being used for mining.
Yes.
I
yes.
remember it, and it seemed to me that it was nylon. I couldn't remember if it was nylon bullets or nylon guns.
Yeah, the bullets were good old .22 longs. But the gun was different. Yeah, the gun was a breakthrough gun. I remember going to my cousin's, their ranch, the family ranch, and picking up that old walnut stock gun and firing it, and just how nice it was, and then grabbing the nylon plastic gun that fired just fine, but it just felt weird. And it took a while for that thing to catch on when they started advertising. Remington didn't want him to go through with this shoot. Remington would not pay him for this shoot. While Winchester was all over it with Toepperwein in 1907, the wording was, back from the Remington office, we don't want to get Winchester upset that we have a Remington man breaking a Winchester record, so we're not in on this. Tom Frye took his normal 2-week vacation. Now, he had deep-pocketed Newt Crumley with a casino to fund everything and pay him. We don't know how much he got paid. A casino owner who's in on a sponsorship is, going to pay a lot of money and took care of him. Anyway, I was really wanting to. Right. let's see here. Talking about Plinky's okay, I need to go a little further up. I wasn't expecting, oh, here's that advertisement you were talking about, okay? Remington did not want to go along with this. Reluctantly, they released the press release like 6 weeks, 2 months later, saying, here's what Tom Frye did, just very hush-hush. And, you know, why? I mean, here's this gun that you could have marketed, and then they started marketing it, you know, and then they stopped. And then in the 70s, I think it was the early 70s, they started marketing it again. And the thing sold like crazy. And they paid Tom Frye in advance, or a bonus, years after he did this. Yes. They sold more than 1 million guns. They finally felt like they should pay the guy, you know, for doing it. So, okay, let me see here. The family and friends would go out to the shooting range in Leon Springs, in the hills just outside of San Antonio, where they had property. And they would go out there and just have these great shooting events with friends. And Toepperwein would teach, and they'd have family out. And it was just, you know, they would have a great time. So the family went out there to Leon Springs, between San Antonio and Bernie in the hill country. After they watched the still nimble Ad shoot right through one of his rifle drawings, this one of Buffalo Bill, Plinky wanted to join the action. Now, they were, you know, it was about this time. Ad was in his 70s, and Plinky was, you know, upper 60s or low, inner 60s. So Plinky wanted to join the action. Her hands trembled, and she tried to control the shakes the best she could. Finally, her uneven hand reached over and grabbed a pistol. She looked at Ad and had him put a cigarette in his mouth. He did, and Plinky's hand still showed some shakiness as she lifted the pistol away from her. Ad often commented to people that the pistols like the one Linky was about to shoot by his face were, quote, I believe, the most difficult to master. It keeps you guessing all the time. It just won't behave all the time, end quote. Anyway, Plinky inched it up into her firing position, and suddenly her hands quieted and were as still as a rock in a field. Bang! The sand went pow off the side of the hill that formed the backdrop of the shooting range at the shack. Ad turned. Plinky's bullet had just blown it clear off. The cigarette, it was gone, shot right out of his mouth. So her hands were shaking, but she felt good enough to get it steady and shoot it. There were some days when I guess she just didn't feel like she should shoot a piece of chalk or a cigarette out of her husband's mouth. But a real long story. They never were injured. I would have to think that when Ad is doing his barrel rolls and doing his somersaults and that sort of thing, I had to think he'd hurt himself, particularly in his 70s. He had to have sprained a thumb or sprained a wrist or done something. But he, you know, he kept at it. I don't know that they showed this. Here we go. You could see the target being shot out of the air while he's laying down backwards, shooting a target that's thrown into the air. Here we go. Let's stand you on your head and shoot. And he'd knock him out of the air. Boom. If his...
He just threw a target in the air
No.
and ran 15 feet
Yes.
and picked up the gun.
Yeah. Sometimes he would somersault. Sometimes he would barrel roll. Sometimes... No, he never served in the military, though the services contracted with him to come and train gunnery. It was aircraft gunnery. They would put these gunners up in towers in World War I, and they would throw traps or other targets to simulate the camels, the Sopwith camel or whatever, or the German planes. I don't want to pronounce it, but meet the. But they would have them, and Ad would train these gunners to shoot at the targets that would go across as they were up in a tower, and this happened in Austin. They were very careful with Plinky. They didn't have her around the rank and file men, they had her with officers, and she would go over training and training manuals with the officers, ideas for training. But they were at the time, product of the times. They were careful. But here again is Ad. He's spelling that out, and that was a huge deal. You still find these tins out there. Tom Frye did the same thing. His mother was a maker of fine hats. She was very crafted with her hands. He had a sister who was a graphic design artist, and Tom Frye was very good. He would do the same sorts of things, but in his day, with the cartoon characters being the Looney Tunes, he would shoot Bugs Bunny. He would shoot Yosemite Sam. He would do a lot of the Looney Tunes characters, and again, no sort of help from any outline. He would just shoot them. So Plinky passed probably 2 to 3 years after that video was taken. Heart failure. Yeah. If you buy the book, I hope you have as much fun reading it as I did researching it and writing it.